Chapter 1. The first time Aldrich came back from a war, I was 16 years old, and I did not know him at all. He was my father's guest, a young commander who had distinguished himself in the Eastern Campaign and who my father, the kingdom's chief physician, had tended during his recovery from a wound that had been more serious than the official reports suggested. My father had that kind of relationship with many soldiers. He was the one they came to when they needed something done quietly and without the particular attention that military hospitals attracted. Aldrich arrived at our house on a gray afternoon in November with his arm in a sling and the specific quality of someone who had been told to rest and was finding rest extremely difficult. He was 22. He had black hair and pale skin and brown eyes that moved through every room he entered the way eyes move when they have been trained to account for every exit and every person and every possible threat. He was doing this in my father's sitting room, which contained no threats whatsoever, and the habit looked slightly absurd in that context and also entirely understandable. I brought him tea because my father asked me to, and I set it on the table beside him, and he looked at it, and then looked at me, and said thank you with the specific politeness of someone who has been raised to be polite and means it rather than performing it. That was the whole of our interaction, that first visit. He stayed 3 weeks while his arm healed. He and my father talked in the evenings, and I heard them through the wall sometimes, not the words but the rhythm of it, my father's steady measured voice and Aldrich's, which was quieter and less frequent. I formed the impression of a young man who listened more than he spoke and thought carefully before he said anything, and found rest genuinely difficult in the specific way of someone whose body knows how to be in motion and does not know what to do with stillness. He left when his arm was healed. He thanked my father properly, and he thanked me for the tea, which I had brought every day for 3 weeks because my father asked me to, and also because by the 3rd week I was doing it before my father asked. He left and I went back to my life, and I did not think about him particularly. Or I thought about him approximately as much as you think about someone who stayed in your house for 3 weeks and was polite about the tea, which is occasionally and without much weight. That was the first time. There were others. Chapter 2. He came back from the Second War when I was 19. Not to my father specifically, to the city, but my father was still the physician that soldiers with things to manage quietly came to, and Aldrich had a thing to manage quietly, and so he came to our house again, and this time he stayed for 6 weeks, and by the end of the 6 weeks we had spoken properly for the first time. Not about anything significant, about books, because I was reading one when he found me in the garden one morning, and he asked what it was, and I told him, and he had read it and had opinions about it, and I had different opinions, and we disagreed about it for 2 weeks with the specific enjoyment of people who find disagreement more interesting than agreement. He left again. He always left. That was the nature of what he was and what he did. He came back from the 3rd campaign when I was 23. My father had died the previous year and the house was mine now, and when Aldrich arrived at the door I understood something I had not understood before, which was that he was coming to the house rather than to my father. The house was different now. I was different now, and he came anyway. He stayed 2 months that time, long enough for the thing that had been growing quietly in the space of his returns and departures to become something I was aware of even if I was not naming it. Long enough for me to understand that the months between his visits had a specific quality of absence that the months of other people's absences did not have. He was different each time he came back, not in the ways that people change when they grow older, though that too, in the ways that people change when they have seen things and done things that leave marks. Each return he was more himself in some ways and less himself in others. The quietness was more settled. The eyes that read every room were more tired. There was something underneath the precision of him that was working very hard and had been working hard for a long time. I noticed all of this the way I noticed most things, carefully and without making it obvious that I was noticing. He came back from the 4th War when I was 26, and that time, he was gone for 8 months before he returned, and the 8 months had been the longest 8 months I had experienced since I understood what his absences felt like. He came back from the 5th when I was 28. 2 weeks before he arrived, someone at court mentioned, in passing, that the general had been wounded, and I spent 14 days with that information sitting in my chest like something pressing before he walked through my door, and I could see for myself that he was upright and breathing. He stayed 4 months that time. I think that was when I understood completely, when I stopped having to work out whether what I felt was something other than what it obviously was. 4 months of him in my house, and the specific quality of having him there, and the way I went to bed every night of those 4 months aware that tomorrow he would still be there. And then he left again. And I let him leave because that was what you did. He had a war to get to. He always had a war to get to. And I had my father's practice to run and my life to live, and I was not the kind of person who said things that were not ready to be said just because the window was closing. I was very good at waiting. The Sixth War started 6 months later. Chapter 3. I have learned over the years to live with a particular kind of not knowing. It is the not knowing that comes with caring about someone who does dangerous things in distant places and sends letters that take weeks to arrive and contain only what the military censors allow and sometimes do not arrive at all, which is its own kind of information that you have to learn not to draw conclusions from too quickly. I run my father's practice. I have been running it for 5 years now, and I am good at it, not as a physician myself, but as the person who manages everything around the physicians, who coordinates the difficult cases, who knows which soldiers with things to manage quietly should be sent to us, and handles the administrative reality of keeping a private medical practice operational in a city that has been sending its people to wars with some regularity. I fill the waiting with work. This is not a strategy I arrived at consciously. It is simply what I do. The practice needs managing, and I manage it, and the days pass, and I count them without counting them, which is to say I am aware of how long it has been without letting that awareness be the first thing I think about in the morning. He writes when he can. The letters are careful and mostly impersonal because they have to be. He describes the landscape sometimes, the quality of light in a particular place, something he observed that he thought I would find interesting. He never describes what is actually happening because what is actually happening cannot go in a letter. I read between what he writes and find what I can. I write back. My letters are longer than his because I have more room in mine. I tell him about the practice and about the city and about the small things that accumulate in a life when someone is not there to see them happen. I tell him these things in the way of someone who is keeping a record for someone who is going to want to know what they missed. The Sixth War is longer than any of the previous ones. 8 months becomes a year. A year becomes 14 months. At 14 months, I receive a letter that is shorter than usual, and I read it 3 times and understand from what it does not say that something has happened and that he is managing it. At 16 months, I receive nothing. 4 weeks of nothing. I work. I run the practice. I do not draw conclusions. At 17 months, he comes home. I open the door and he is standing on my step, and he looks like 17 months of the Sixth War and also like himself, which are 2 things that are increasingly the same thing and increasingly different things. And I look at him, and I feel the specific feeling that I have spent 12 years learning to manage, and that in this moment I am not managing at all. I step back and let him in. He comes inside. The door closes. He is home. Chapter 4. He is quieter after the Sixth War than after any of the previous ones. Not a new quiet, the same quality of quiet that has been deepening across 12 years of returns, but more of it, more settled and also more weighted. He moves through my house with the familiar ease of someone who knows where everything is, because he does, but there is something underneath the familiarity that is working to maintain it. I give him time. This is something I have learned across the returns. The first days are not for conversation. They are for existing somewhere safe while the particular tension of a war slowly unknots itself. He sleeps more than he usually does in the first week and eats when I put food in front of him and sits in the chair by the window in the evenings and looks at the garden, and I sit in the other chair and read, and we are in the same room, and that is enough. By the second week he is more present, not fully himself yet, but closer. He helps with small things around the house without being asked, the way he always does, the specific helpfulness of someone who needs to be useful while the useful things they usually do are temporarily unavailable. He fixes the hinge on the kitchen door that has been slightly wrong for months. He reorganizes the storage of the medical supplies in a way that is objectively better than how I had them. I let him do these things without pointing out that I had managed them perfectly well before he arrived. He asks about the practice. I tell him. He listens in the way he has always listened, with the full quality of his attention, and asks the questions that indicate he has understood what I said and has been thinking about it. He remembers the things I told him in my letters, and asks follow-up questions that require me to remember what I wrote, which is sometimes a challenge because I write to him the way I think, which is quickly and without drafting. I ask him things too, not about the war. He will tell me what he wants to tell me when he wants to tell me, and pushing before then produces nothing useful and costs him something. I ask him about the places, the landscape, the quality of light he described in his letters. He tells me, and his voice is different when he talks about these things than when he talks about most things, more alive to them. He has always had this, the specific attentiveness of someone who notices the world around them, even when the world around them is a difficult one. The third week he tells me about the 14 months, not all of it. The parts he can tell without the parts he cannot tell becoming necessary context. I listen and I do not try to fix anything because some things cannot be fixed, and he knows that, and what he needs from me is not fixing. It is the specific presence of someone who is not afraid of what he is bringing into the room. I am not afraid of it. I have been not afraid of it across 12 years and 6 wars, and I am not going to start now. By the fourth week he is himself again, not entirely. The wars take something each time that does not come all the way back, but himself enough. Himself in the ways that matter, the dry quiet humor, the thoroughness of his attention, the specific way he is in my house which is different from the way he is anywhere else, more at ease, more present, more him. I notice this every time he comes back, how different the version of him in my house is from the version of him that the kingdom sees. The kingdom sees the general. My house gets something else. I have never asked him about this directly. I have filed it with the other things I notice and do not say. Chapter 5. I know things about him that nobody else knows. Not secrets, not things he has deliberately kept from the world. Things that are only visible if you have been watching someone across 12 years of returns and departures, in the specific circumstances of a house where the performance is briefly suspended. I know that he cannot sleep on his back. He has never said this. I know it because across 6 recoveries I have understood from the sounds and the silences through the wall which positions produce sleep and which produce wakefulness, and on his back is always wakefulness. I know that he reads when he cannot sleep, which is often, and that what he reads when he cannot sleep is different from what he reads in daylight. Daylight reading is practical. Military history, strategy, the reports and documents that never fully stop even when he is technically not at war. Night reading is something else, poetry sometimes, natural history, things that have nothing to do with what he does, and that seem to be the specific category of thing his mind reaches for when the practical is not available. I know that he finds large social gatherings genuinely difficult in a way that his public performance of ease in them would not suggest. I know this because I have seen him after them, in the specific state of someone who has been managing something demanding for several hours and is now in a place where they do not have to manage it anymore. I have never said anything about this. He has never said anything about this. We have simply understood that my house is a place where the managing stops. I know that he thinks about leaving the army. He has never said this either. But across 12 years I have heard the edges of it in things he says about the future and things he does not say, and the specific quality of his silences on certain evenings when he is looking at the garden, and whatever he is thinking about is large and unresolved. I know that he comes back to me specifically, not to the city, not to the country. He comes to my house. He has friends in this city, people he could stay with, places he could go. He comes here, every time. He has come here every time for 12 years without either of us ever discussing why. I know what I feel about him. I have known it with clarity for approximately 6 years and with some version of it for longer. I have not said it. There are reasons. He is always leaving, and the things you say to someone who is about to leave have a different weight from the things you say to someone who is staying, and I have not wanted to put something large and irreversible into the space between a departure and a return. But he has been back for 4 weeks now, and the 6th war is behind him, and he is more himself than he has been in any of the recent returns, and something is different about this particular visit, in a way I cannot entirely account for, but that I feel in every conversation and every shared evening in the sitting room. Something is building. I can feel it the way I can feel weather, not the specific thing, the pressure of it. I wait. I am very good at waiting. Chapter 6. I understand his side of it the way I understand most things about him, from watching and from the things he says that are adjacent to the things he does not say. He has been coming back here for 12 years, every time, without ever explaining why, without ever making anything of the choice, without ever saying the word that would turn a pattern into a declaration. He has been sitting in the chair by my window and eating meals at my table and existing in my house as the version of himself that exists nowhere else, and he has not once said why. I think about why he has not said it. I have thought about this across many of his departures and many of his returns, and I have arrived at several possible answers that are not mutually exclusive. The first is that he does not know how. He is a person who is extremely precise with language in professional contexts, who chooses words with care and uses them accurately, and who is significantly less fluent in the specific kind of language that the personal requires. This is not unusual. A great many people who are excellent at saying difficult things professionally are not excellent at saying difficult things personally. The second is that he is afraid of what saying it would do to the pattern, the returns and the house and the chair by the window and the version of himself that exists here. He has had this for 12 years, and it works, and saying something that is large and irreversible could change what it is, and if it changed what it was, he would lose it. I understand this fear. I have had a version of it myself. The third is that he does not think he has the right. He has been leaving every time for 12 years. He has been going to wars and coming back and leaving again and never staying. And saying something that asks someone to be in your life in a particular way when you cannot offer permanence is a specific kind of asking that requires a specific kind of confidence that he may not have had yet. I think all three of these are true. I think they have been true for different amounts of time and in different combinations, and I think something about the Sixth War, about what it was and how long it was, and the letter at 14 months and the 4 weeks of nothing, has shifted the balance of them. He sits in the chair by the window more than he used to. He watches me more directly than he used to and does not look away when I notice. He says my name in conversation with a specific quality of care that was always there but is more present now. He is getting ready to say something. I can feel it the way I can feel weather, not the specific thing but the pressure of it building. I wait for it. I am patient. I have 12 years of practice at being patient about this specific thing. But I also think about the third reason, about someone who does not think they have the right to ask because they keep leaving, and I think about what I know that he does not know I know, which is that I would rather have the returns than not have them. That the specific quality of his presence in my house across 12 years of visits has been worth every departure. That if the choice is between saying nothing and having the pattern continue unchanged, or saying something and risking the pattern changing, I have been on the wrong side of that choice for too long already. I decide this on a Tuesday evening in the 6th week of his return. I am going to say something first. Chapter 7. It is a Thursday evening, and we are in the sitting room. He is in his chair and I am in mine, and we have been talking about something that I have already forgotten because I have not been tracking the conversation with my usual attention. I have been tracking something else, the building pressure, the decision I made on Tuesday. The specific way this evening feels different from other evenings in a way that has nothing to do with what we're talking about and everything to do with what is underneath it. The conversation finds a natural pause. The room is warm. The garden is dark outside the window. He is looking at the garden with the thinking stillness that I know well. I say his name. He turns and looks at me, brown eyes, the full quality of his attention, which is the thing about him that has always made me feel most seen. When Aldrich looks at you, he is actually looking. There is no divided attention, no part of him somewhere else. He is there. I tell him something. I tell him that I have been thinking about the pattern, about 12 years of returns and departures and the specific rhythm of us, which is not like the rhythm of most people, which is its own thing, which I have been inside for so long that I sometimes forget it is unusual. I tell him that I have known for a long time what I feel about him. I tell him that I have not said it for reasons that made sense when I was inside them, and that I have spent this visit understanding make less sense than I thought. I tell him that the 14 months of the Sixth War and the 4 weeks of silence were the most difficult things I have experienced in 12 years of waiting, and that I am not willing to let him leave again without him knowing that. I tell him that I love him. I say it simply and without elaboration because it does not need elaboration. It is the simplest true thing I have said in 12 years, and it does not need dressing. He is very still, the thinking stillness, but the most present version of it. His brown eyes are doing something I have not seen them do in 12 years of watching him, which is that they are not managing anything, not the professional precision, not the careful consideration before speaking, just looking at me with everything on the surface. Then he tells me something. He tells me that he has been coming back here for 12 years because this is where he comes back, not because of the house or the city or the practice or any of the reasons that could be named from the outside, because of me specifically, because in 12 years of wars and all the things that go with wars, this is the thing that has been constant, not a place, a person, me. He tells me that he has not said this because of all the reasons I have already thought of in his behalf, which I do not tell him I have thought of, and that the Sixth War was a specific kind of long and the 4 weeks of letters not arriving was a specific kind of difficult, and that he came home, and I opened the door, and he understood something he had been not understanding on purpose for a very long time. He tells me that he does not want to leave again without this being said. He tells me that he loves me, simply, without elaboration, the same simplicity I used and for the same reason. The sitting room is very quiet. The garden is dark outside. We are in the chairs we have been sitting in across 12 years of evenings, and the chairs are the same chairs and everything else is completely different. I reach across the space between the chairs. He takes my hand before I have finished reaching. He holds it the way you hold something you have been careful about for a very long time and are now allowed to hold properly. I hold his hand back. The room is the same room. We are the same people. 12 years of all of it sitting in the air around us, and this at the end of it, and it was always going to be this. Chapter 8. The morning after is ordinary in a way that is completely extraordinary. He is in the kitchen when I come downstairs. He has made coffee because he always makes coffee when he is up first, and he is always up first. He hands me a cup and we stand in the kitchen and drink coffee, and the kitchen is the same kitchen, and we are the same people, and nothing has changed, and everything has changed, and both of those things are simultaneously true in a way that I find deeply satisfying. He asks me a question at breakfast. He asks about the practice and whether I have thought about what it would look like in 5 years. He asks it in the way of someone who is asking, because they are thinking about the future specifically, and the future includes me specifically, and he would like to understand what my version of it looks like. I answer honestly. I tell him what I have thought about and what I have not thought about and what I want and what I am uncertain about. I tell him all of this with the ease of someone who has been honest with this person across 12 years and finds it the most natural mode of communication available. He listens. He tells me things about his own version of the future that he has not told me before, not because he was hiding them, because the future was always something that existed over there, across the next departure, and now it is something that is in the room with us and worth talking about directly. He tells me that he has been thinking about leaving the army, that the Sixth War was the one that made the thinking into something more than thinking, that he does not know exactly what comes after for him, but that he knows what he wants it to be near and that it is here, that it is me. I look at him across the breakfast table, black hair and pale skin and brown eyes that are not managing anything this morning, just looking at me with the specific ease of someone who has put down something heavy and found that the putting down was the right thing. I think about 12 years of him leaving, about the specific quality of his absence that other absences do not have, about waiting for letters and counting months and opening doors. I think about what it would be like to not be waiting. I think about what it would be like to simply have him here, not as a return, as a life. I find that I am very in favor of this. I tell him so, in the direct way that I have always talked to him, which is more directly than I talk to most people, which is one of the things that has always characterized the version of us that exists in this house. He looks at me and something in his face does the specific thing I have been watching it do for 12 years without being able to call it what it was. Now I can call it what it is. It is exactly what I hoped it was. It has always been exactly what I hoped it was. Chapter 9. He goes to the capital 3 weeks later. Not to another war, to a meeting with the command, to a series of conversations that have been a long time coming and that he has been preparing for across several evenings at my kitchen table, with his papers spread out and me at the other end of the table doing my own work, and the specific comfortable domesticity of two people working in the same space. He is gone for 10 days. 10 days is nothing. 10 days is the shortest he has ever been gone, and I know he will be back at the end of it, and the knowing makes the 10 days completely different from every other absence I have waited out. He comes back on a Friday evening. I open the door and he is there, and I have been opening this door for 12 years at the end of absences that were never supposed to be this short, and this time it is different. This time the absence was short because it was supposed to be short. This time the return is not a return from a war, but a return from a trip. These are not the same thing. He tells me that evening what was decided. He is leaving the army, not immediately. These things have timelines and obligations and the orderly management of a transition that the command requires of someone in his position. But the decision is made, and the process is in motion, and there is an end point that is closer than the beginning. I listen to all of this, and I think about 12 years of waiting and what it is going to feel like when the waiting is not the shape of things anymore. He also tells me something else. He has been offered a position at the military academy, training, the specific kind of work that uses what he knows without sending him back to the places he has been. It would be here, in the city. It would mean staying. I think about staying, about what it means when someone who has been leaving finally stays, not for a visit, not for a recovery, but because this is where they are. He asks me what I think. He asks in the way he asks things that matter to him, with the full quality of his attention on my answer, genuinely wanting to know. I tell him that I think it sounds right. I tell him this carefully and completely, and with the specific honesty that has always been the mode between us. He nods, he looks at the garden. Then he says something that I have been hoping for without letting myself hope for it too precisely, because hoping for it too precisely seemed like a risk I was not ready to take. He says that he would like to stop being a guest in this house. I look at him, pale skin and black hair and brown eyes that are looking at me with everything on the surface. I tell him that I would like that too. The garden is dark outside the window. The house is quiet. He is here. He is going to keep being here. 12 years of returns and departures leading to this, and it was worth every single one of them. Chapter 10. Spring comes and the house is different. Not dramatically, not in the ways that houses are different when something large has happened. In the small ways, his books on the shelf beside mine, his coat on the hook by the door, his coffee cup in the morning already on the counter before I come downstairs because he is always up first and he always makes coffee, and this is no longer a thing that happens during visits. It is just a thing that happens. He starts at the academy in March. I watch him leave on the first morning with his papers under his arm and the specific quality of someone who is going somewhere they are supposed to be. And I think about 12 years of watching him leave with very different things under his arm toward very different destinations, and the difference between those departures, and this one is so large that I have to stand in the kitchen for a moment after the door closes and simply feel it. He comes home in the evening, every evening. This is a thing that happens now. He comes home. We have dinner, we talk about our respective days. He tells me about the academy and the students and the specific challenges and occasional absurdities of teaching people who are at the beginning of something he has been doing for 20 years. I tell him about the practice. He listens and asks questions, and I listen and ask questions, and the evenings pass in the way that evenings pass when you are in them with the right person. He is different here than he was anywhere else. I have known this for 12 years. Now I have it every day, and I understand it more completely than I could when it was intermittent. The ease of him in this house, the specific version of himself that exists here and nowhere else. I see it in the mornings and the evenings, and all the ordinary moments that were not available before because he was not here for the ordinary moments. He is better here, not happier necessarily, though I think also happier, but more himself, less of the weight that accumulated across 20 years of wars and returns slowly unknotting in the specific way that things unknot when the conditions that created the knot are no longer present. He sleeps better. I know this not because he tells me, but because I know what sleep sounds like through a wall, and it sounds different now, more settled, less interrupted by whatever it is that made it interrupted before. He laughs more. This is the thing I notice most. He has always had the dry, quiet humor, the specific gift for finding the absurdity in things, but across 20 years of wars it has become rarer and more carefully deployed. Here it is more frequent and less careful, and I find that I am collecting these moments the way I have always collected the things I notice about him. He catches me watching him one morning. He is reading at the kitchen table, and I am standing in the doorway with my coffee, and he looks up and finds me watching him with what I imagine is a completely obvious expression, and he looks at me with those brown eyes, and something on his face is very warm and very simple. I do not apologize for watching. I have been watching him for 12 years, and I am not going to pretend I was doing something else. He goes back to his book. I go and sit across from him and get out my own work. The morning does whatever mornings do. He is here. He is going to keep being here. That is everything. Epilogue. 1 year after he stopped leaving, I am in the garden on a Saturday morning, doing the things the garden requires in spring, and he comes out with 2 cups of coffee and sits on the bench near the wall and watches me work. This has become a Saturday morning thing, not planned, accumulated, the way everything between us has accumulated, one morning at a time, without announcement, until it is simply what we do. I work and he watches, and eventually I come and sit beside him on the bench and take the coffee he has been holding for me, and we look at the garden together. The garden is doing well this year, better than it has done in some years. I think this is because there is someone here now who notices when things need attention and does something about it without making it a project, which is very him. He says something. He says he has been thinking about the first time he came back, when he was 22 and I was 16, and I brought him tea for 3 weeks because my father asked me to. I say that I also brought the tea before my father asked by the 3rd week. He looks at me, brown eyes warm. He says he knows. He says he noticed at the time and did not know what to do with noticing. I look at the garden. I think about 22-year-old Aldrich noticing a 16-year-old girl bring tea and filing it away in the same way that I have been filing things about him for 20 years. I tell him that we are both very bad at saying things in a timely manner. He says that we are both very good at waiting. I consider this, it is true. We are both very good at waiting. We waited 12 years. We waited through 6 wars and 17 months and 4 weeks of silence, and all the departures and returns that accumulated between when I was 16 and when I was 30, and the sum of all that waiting is this Saturday morning in this garden with this coffee and this person who is not leaving. I lean into him. He puts his arm around me. The garden is doing well. The coffee is good. The morning is exactly the right length. He has fought every war the kingdom has sent him to. He has come back from all of them. He has always come back here. Now he is simply here. And that is everything. That is more than enough. It is exactly right.